The room went silent the moment she walked in. Not because she announced herself, not because she wore something loud or said something sharp. The room went silent because 300 people suddenly understood, all at once, that the woman standing in the doorway of the Meridian Grand Ballroom was not someone to be looked past anymore. She wore ivory, simple, clean, tailored ivory. Her name was Tobenna Osei, and 5 years ago, she had been scrubbing floors in the very building that now bore her company's logo on the event program sitting on every table in that room. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to where this story actually begins, because the ending only means something when you understand what came before it. Tobenna was 26 when she first took the job at Holloway Acquisitions. She hadn't planned on it. She had a degree in accounting from a university back home in Ghana, a mother with failing kidneys, a younger brother still in secondary school, and exactly 11 days before her rent was due. The cleaning position paid $17 an hour, offered benefits after 90 days, and didn't require her to explain a foreign credential to a hiring manager who'd never heard of her university. So she took it. She was good at being invisible. That was the thing about cleaning work that nobody talked about. You learned to move through spaces without disturbing them. You learned to read a room. You learned which executives liked their trash emptied before 8 a.m., which ones left personal documents sitting out on their desks, which ones never looked up when you came in, and which ones did. Kendrick Holloway looked up. He was 34, the eldest son of the company's founder, being groomed for the CEO position his father had already half vacated. He was broad-shouldered and careful with his words, and had the kind of stillness about him that people mistook for arrogance until they realized it was actually attention. He paid attention. That was his thing. The first time he spoke to Tobenna, she was wiping down the glass partition outside the executive boardroom at 7:15 in the morning. "You always start with the glass," he said. She turned. He was standing in the hallway with a coffee cup, watching her. Not the way some of them watched, not that kind of watching. He was just observing, the way he probably observed everything. "Smears show most on glass," she said. "If I leave it for later, the morning light hits it wrong and the whole floor looks dirty even when it isn't." He considered this. "That's smart. It's just practical." He nodded slowly and walked into his office. That was all. But the next morning, he said good morning, and the morning after that. And within 3 weeks, the good mornings had stretched into conversations. About her brother's progress in school, about the auditing software she'd taught herself on her laptop at night, about a news article she'd read about currency fluctuations in West Africa that she mentioned offhandedly while emptying his recycling bin. He looked at her differently after the currency comment. Not in a romantic way, not yet. In the way someone looks at a map they'd assumed was decorative and suddenly realizes it's accurate. She should have known, even then, that maps get folded away and put in drawers. She should have known. But she was 26, and she was tired, and he was kind in a way she hadn't expected from anyone in that building. So when the kindness became something else, slower, quieter, more deliberate, she let it. They kept it to themselves. That was his idea, and she understood it, or told herself she did. His family had expectations. His father was watching every move he made. His mother, Constance Holloway, ran the family's social life the way a conductor runs an orchestra, with absolute authority and no tolerance for instruments that hadn't been pre-approved. Tobenna had met Constance once, in the lobby. The woman had looked at her the way you look at something that doesn't belong on the furniture. She should have paid more attention to that look. For 8 months, Tobenna and Kendrick existed in the quiet spaces between his real life and the one nobody was supposed to know about. She taught herself his coffee order, his moods, the particular silence that meant he was worried about something he wouldn't say out loud. He learned that she stayed up until midnight studying for the CPA exam she was scheduled to take in the spring. He bought her prep books and left them on his desk for her to find, unsigned. It was love, or something that wore love's clothes well enough to fool her. Then she found out she was pregnant. She told him on a Thursday evening, in his car, in the parking garage below the building where she cleaned his floors. She had rehearsed the words for 4 days. She had told herself she was prepared for any reaction. She was not prepared for the one she got. He didn't say anything for a long time. He sat there looking at the concrete pillar in front of the car. Then he said, very quietly, "My mother cannot find out. Not we'll figure this out. Not are you okay? Not even her name. My mother cannot find out. Kendrick?" "I need some time to think," he said. She went home. She waited. He texted her 3 days later to say he thought it was best if she took a leave of absence. The company would give her a small severance, he said. For her comfort. He used the word comfort, like it was a bandage he was pressing against something that needed surgery. She called him back. He didn't answer. She showed up to the building the following Monday. Her access card had been deactivated. She stood in the lobby of Holloway Acquisitions for 4 minutes, her card in her hand, people moving around her like a stream around a stone. Then she put the card in her pocket, walked out to the street, sat down on a bench half a block away, and cried, not sobbing, just the quiet, steady kind of crying that comes when you finally understand something you'd been refusing to see. When she was done, she wiped her face and called her mother. "Come home," her mother said, in Twi. "I can't afford the flight," Tobenna said. "Then you will manage where you are," her mother said, "and you will be fine. Because you are my daughter, and being fine is what we do." It wasn't advice, exactly, but it was something to hold on to. The next year and a half was the kind of hard that doesn't make for a clean story. Tobenna found a room in a shared apartment in the east end of the city. 4 women, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that smelled permanently of different people's cooking. She took a job at a grocery store during the day and studied at night. Her back hurt from standing on concrete floors for 8 hours. Her eyes hurt from reading textbook screens in bad light. Her savings account had $340 in it, the week her son was born. She named him Kofi, after her grandfather. She brought him home from the hospital in a second-hand car seat her neighbor had given her. She put him in a second-hand crib, assembled with a YouTube tutorial and a donated screwdriver. She nursed him in the dark at 2 in the morning, while her phone showed her flashcard apps she'd downloaded to keep studying during night feeds. She passed the CPA exam when Kofi was 4 months old. She cried in the examination center parking lot for 10 minutes, then drove home to relieve the neighbor who had watched the baby, then made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table and looked at the result on her phone screen and thought, okay, now what? She started freelancing, small businesses, mostly, restaurants, a Ghanaian hair-braiding salon on Lawrence Avenue, a Caribbean grocery, a Nigerian-owned construction company, whose owner, a wide-faced man named Mr. Boateng, kept meticulous paper records in accordion folders and genuinely did not understand why the government kept fining him. She fixed his books in 6 weeks. He referred her to 2 other business owners. Those 2 referred her to 4 more. By the time Kofi was 18 months old, Tobenna had 7 regular clients and a website. By the time he was 2, she had 17 clients, a registered business name, and a part-time assistant she paid through a digital app. By the time he was 3, she had moved out of the shared apartment and into a 1-bedroom in a quieter building, where the bathroom was hers alone and the kitchen smelled only of things she chose to cook. She did not think about Kendrick often. Sometimes she would see a silver car like his and her stomach would tighten, then release. She had applied for child support through the province. He had settled it quietly, through lawyers, with a fixed monthly amount that she accepted because Kofi needed things, and pride was a luxury she was rationing carefully. She did not hate him. Hating him would have taken energy she didn't have. What she had instead was clarity. She understood now that the version of Kendrick she had loved had been, at least partly, something she had assembled herself from available materials. She had taken his attention and his coffee morning conversations and his prep books left unsigned on a desk, and she had built a person out of them that had never fully existed. That wasn't entirely her fault, but it also wasn't entirely his. It was just what happened when someone needed to be loved badly enough. She wasn't in that place anymore. She kept moving. The call that changed the shape of things came in the spring, when Kofi had just turned 4 and was deeply opinionated about which socks he was willing to wear. A woman named Patricia Achimpong reached out through Tobenna's website. She was a partner at a mid-sized financial consulting firm that was looking to expand its small business advisory division. She had found Tobenna through Mr. Boateng, who had apparently described her to Patricia as the woman who saved my business and didn't make me feel stupid about it. Patricia liked that description. She wanted to meet. They met at a coffee shop on Bloor Street. Patricia was 50-something, wore reading glasses on a chain, and spoke with the direct efficiency of someone who had stopped performing politeness somewhere in her 40s and found life considerably better afterward. "I've looked at your client list," Patricia said. "Your retention rate is extraordinary. Do you know why?" Tobenna wrapped both hands around her mug. "I think because I explain things," she said. "Most of my clients have never had a bookkeeper who sat down with them and explained what the numbers actually mean. They've just had people who did the work and handed them a document. I sit down with them. I translate." Patricia studied her. "How would you feel about doing that at scale?" It took another 3 meetings, a contract review, a negotiation. Tobenna ran herself without a lawyer, because she'd read enough financial agreements by that point to understand the structure, and one very long phone call to her mother back in Ghana to explain what was happening. "Is it good?" her mother asked. "It's very good, Mama. Then do it and stop calling me to ask permission you don't need." She joined the firm as a senior advisor. Within 14 months, she had built their small business division from a peripheral service into their second highest revenue stream. Within 2 years, Patricia offered her a partnership. Within 3 years, Tobenna Osei was a name that moved through certain business communities in this city with the particular weight of someone who had built real things and could prove it. She spoke at a business conference in the fall. She was on a podcast. She mentored young women through an organization that worked with newcomers, trying to navigate the Canadian financial system. She wore good shoes and took Kofi to his soccer games on Saturday mornings and called her mother every Sunday. And the life she was living was so fully her own by that point that there were whole weeks when she didn't think about the parking garage or the deactivated access card or the word comfort delivered like a severance package. And then the Meridian Gala invitation arrived. The Meridian Business Excellence Awards was the kind of event that mattered to the kind of people who tracked who was in the room. Tobenna had been nominated for the Emerging Leader category, which she found slightly amusing, given that she was 33 and had been leading things quietly for the better part of a decade. But she understood the framing. She accepted the nomination. She bought the ivory dress. She arranged for Kofi to stay with her neighbor, who had graduated from lending car seats to being something close to family. She did not think about the fact that Holloway Acquisitions was listed as a platinum sponsor until she was in the car on the way to the venue. She saw the name on the program she'd been emailed and sat with it for a moment, then put her phone away. It didn't matter. It was just a name on a page. She told herself that all the way up the elevator to the ballroom floor. She was standing near the bar with Patricia and two other women from the firm, holding sparkling water when she saw him. Kendrick had aged in the way that men with money sometimes did. Not badly, but differently. He was heavier in the face. His hair was cut very close. He was standing with a group of men in suits, and he was laughing at something one of them had said, and the laugh looked real, and for a half-second Tobenna felt the old tightening in her chest before she recognized it for what it was. Not longing, not residue, but memory. The physical record of something that had happened, that was all. He saw her approximately 4 minutes later. She knew the exact moment because she watched it happen. His eyes moved across the room and stopped, and she saw his face do something complicated, a fast sequence of things she had spent years being able to read, and then he excused himself from his group. She turned back to her conversation. "You know him?" Patricia asked quietly. "We've met," Tobenna said. He reached her in about a minute and a half. "Tobenna." She looked at him. She gave him the look she had, in all honesty, been given time to practice. Not cold, not warm, simply present. She had not planned this moment. She had not rehearsed. But she had spent 5 years becoming a person who did not need to rehearse. "Kendrick," she said, "congratulations on the sponsorship." The men from his group were at a distance, but watching. Patricia had gracefully turned to talk to someone else, which was one of the many things Tobenna appreciated about Patricia. He said something about it being a long time. She agreed that it was. He said she looked well. She said thank you. He asked about, and here he stopped, and she could see him trying to navigate the geography of what he was allowed to ask. He asked if she was doing well. "I'm doing very well," she said. She didn't offer more than that. He seemed to want her to say something that would make this easier for him. She had nothing to offer in that direction. "I've followed your work," he said finally. "Tobenna, what you've built, it's remarkable." She tilted her head slightly. "I had a lot of motivation," she said, and she said it simply, without sharpness, without invitation. She meant it as a plain statement of fact. He could take it however he needed to. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved through his expression that she recognized. She had watched it arrive on his face once before, in a parking garage, and watched him shut it away. Tonight, it had nowhere to go. "Is he?" He started. "He's healthy," she said. "He's in school. He has my mother's stubbornness and a very specific relationship with wearing matching socks." She paused. "He's fine, Kendrick. He's always been fine. I made sure of it." That was the moment. She could feel the room in her peripheral vision, the noise of 300 people, the chandelier light, the way the evening felt suddenly quiet inside, like the eye of something. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform anything for the people nearby who might be watching. She just told him the truth, in the tone of someone who had made peace with the work of it. "I don't have anything else for you tonight," she said. "But I hope the rest of your evening is good." She turned back toward the room, toward the table where her name was printed on a card, toward the award that someone was going to call her up to accept in about 40 minutes, toward the life that was waiting on the other side of all this ambient noise. Behind her, she did not hear him follow. They called her name at 9:17. She walked to the front of the ballroom in her ivory dress and stood at the podium and looked out at 300 people, some of whom she knew and some of whom she didn't. And she thought briefly of a parking garage and a second-hand car seat and flashcard apps in the dark and her mother's voice saying, "Being fine is what we do." She thought of Kofi's face that morning, refusing to wear the socks with the orange stripe because orange was, in his 4-year-old opinion, a deeply problematic color. She smiled. She thanked Patricia. She thanked her clients, who had trusted her with the real numbers, the honest numbers, the ones that told the truth about what they'd built. She said that the most important financial skill she had ever learned was not in any textbook. It was the willingness to stay in the room when things got hard and to read what the numbers were actually saying, not what you wanted them to say. She did not look at the Holloway acquisitions table. She did not need to. Afterward, in the lobby, Patricia squeezed her arm. "That was perfect," she said. "It was honest," Tobenna said. "Same thing, in my experience." She got into the car at 10:40. She texted her neighbor, "On my way. Give him a hug from me." She took off her heels and drove in her bare feet, which she was fully aware was probably illegal, and did it anyway. She thought about calling her mother. It was morning in Accra. Her mother would be awake, sitting with tea, listening to something on the radio. She called. "How was it?" her mother asked before Tobenna could say anything. "Good," Tobenna said. "I won." "Of course you did," her mother said. "What else?" Tobenna was quiet for a moment. The streetlights moved across her windshield one by one. "He was there," she said. A pause. And nothing," Tobenna said. "That's the thing, Mama. It was nothing. He was just a person in the room." She could hear her mother exhale, not with surprise, but with the particular satisfaction of someone who had been waiting a long time to hear exactly that. "Good," her mother said. "I know," Tobenna said. She drove home through the quiet streets, one hand on the wheel, bare feet on the floor of a car she'd bought herself, heading back to a son who was probably asleep with one sock on and one sock off, in an apartment that smelled like the food she chose to cook. The child he had walked away from had grown up watching her build something from nothing, and when that child was old enough to understand what he'd been watching, he would know, not from being told, but from having seen it, that the people who underestimate you are not your problem. They are simply people who will one day sit in a room where your name is called and have nowhere to put their hands. If this story moved something in you, stay with us at Fresh African Folktales, because every week we sit down with a story that deserves to be told. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and tell us in the comments. If you were Tobenna, would you have said more? Or was the silence enough?